In our exploration of the mystic and the arcane, we've journeyed through the ancient landscapes of magic, tracing the footsteps of those who harnessed its power. From the earliest whispers of witchcraft to the enthralling practices of ancient Greece, which we delved into in our previous episode, our narrative has woven a tapestry rich in history and mystique. Today, we venture forth to a new chapter in this tale, the grandeur of ancient Rome, a civilization renowned for its might and majesty. Rome's intricate dance with magic and belief provides a fascinating backdrop to our ongoing journey. As we traverse the cobbled streets of the Roman Empire, we'll uncover the complex interplay between pagan traditions and emerging Christian beliefs, and explore the lives of those who stood at the crossroads of this spiritual evolution. So, without further ado, let us embark on this captivating journey into the heart of ancient Rome, a realm where divinity danced with the earthly. If you are enjoying this, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out. Thank you. In the nascent days of Rome, the universe pulsed with a vivacity that intertwined the divine, the natural, and the human. The Romans, with their pantheon of deities, saw gods in every facet of life. As Rome expanded its territories and asserted its dominance over vast landscapes and cultures, it also began to grapple with diverse magical practices and beliefs, often confronting them with a desire to regulate and control. But within this kaleidoscope of beliefs, where did the practitioners of magic and divination see themselves? And how did society and authority view them? As the poet Virgil captured in his Aeneid, the Romans felt an intrinsic bond with the divine. Do the gods light this fire in our hearts, or does each man's mad desire become his god? Virgil, Aeneid, Book 7, 48. Within this world, magic practitioners perceived themselves as conduits, bridging the realm of the gods with that of the mortals. To them, their practices were not subversions, but deeply rooted traditions, ways to heal, predict, and protect. Amidst grand temples and vibrant festivals, practitioners of magic carved out their niche. They weren't the dreaded witches of later eras, but individuals who believed they were tapping into natural forces and divine energies. Their self-perception was that of healers, seers, and intermediaries. To them, their potions and rituals were not subversive acts, but services grounded in tradition and knowledge. Society's view was more varied. In the bustling markets and homes, these practitioners were often revered. To the common Roman, they bridged the gap between the tangible and the mystical. Their skills, whether predicting futures or concocting remedies, were sought after. Yet, alongside admiration ran undercurrents of skepticism and fear. As Pliny the Elder's Natural History reminds us, magic, a thing full of fraud, has held the minds of all nations in thraldom. Pliny the Elder, Natural History, Book 30, 2. Society's view of magic was also deeply influenced by prevailing notions of gender, class, and cultural origins. Women, especially those from lower echelons or perceived as foreign, frequently found themselves at the crosshairs of suspicion. While ancient texts often depicted women as practitioners of magic, they were also disproportionately its victims, facing accusations and persecutions. Such societal views weren't just rooted in the mysterious allure of magic, but were reflective of broader anxieties. Women wielding power, particularly through arcane means, could be perceived as upending traditional gender roles, making them subjects of both reverence and fear. The Roman ethos of dominance was evident not only in their conquests, but also in their societal structures. As a culture that prized order and hierarchy, any challenge to these structures, especially through means seen as subversive, like certain magical practices, was met with unease. However, it's crucial to understand that not all women in religious or magical roles were marginalized. A prime example of this was the Vestal Virgins, priestesses of Vesta, the goddess of the hearth. These women, chosen from noble families at a young age, held a unique and revered position in Roman society. They were responsible for maintaining the sacred fire of Vesta, and their purity was paramount for the well-being and security of Rome. In essence, they performed state-sanctioned magical rituals, ensuring the city's protection and prosperity. These virgins enjoyed immense privileges, from the best seats at public games to immunity from many of Rome's laws. Their prominent and respected role highlights that the Roman attitude towards women in spiritual roles was not uniformly restrictive or dismissive. Instead, like everything else, it was layered and deeply entwined with societal structures, traditions, and the very fabric of the Roman state itself. This ethos of dominance and submission was pervasive, even reflected in Roman sexuality. Rather than the modern dichotomies of hetero and homosexual, Roman sexual dynamics often revolved around active and passive roles, irrespective of gender. Those who played the dominant role were seen in a more favorable light, while the submissive role was often viewed with disdain or as lesser. This dominance-oriented worldview influenced much of Roman society, even in their perceptions of magic and its practitioners. The cultural dynamics of dominance and submission can be seen echoed in various facets of Roman society. The Roman poet Martial, in his epigrams, frequently alludes to these dynamics, commenting on both the roles and the societal perceptions associated with them. These views extended beyond mere physical acts, shaping broader societal structures and influencing perceptions of power, control, and even spiritual practices. Similarly, foreigners, especially those from the East, brought with them distinct religious and magical practices that, while enchanting to some, were deemed exotic and potentially dangerous by others. This interplay of gender, class, and foreignness added layers of complexity to Rome's perception of magic, casting certain practitioners as revered figures and others as societal outliers. But what of Rome's authority? The Senate and the magistrates were guardians of Rome's religious and societal order. While they sanctioned grand religious festivals, they were also vigilant against practices that might disrupt the Pax Deorum, the sacred bond with the gods. Authorities were wary of any form of divination or magic that seemed to challenge or bypass the official channels of communication with the divine. Their desire to dominate was not limited to territorial conquests. It extended to the spiritual realm, where there was an increasing push to standardize and control religious and magical practices. Within the private confines of the Roman household, magic had its unique space. Household shrines were commonplace, dedicated to the lares, protective deities of the home. Family members often invoked these spirits for protection, prosperity, and well-being. Amulets, talismans, and spells were employed to guard against evil spirits, the evil eye, or to attract love and success. The Roman playwright Plautus alludes to such practices in his comedies, jesting about love potions and charms. These household magical practices, deeply personal and protective, stood in contrast to the grander, state-sanctioned religious rites, and yet they were an intrinsic part of Roman life. They underline the duality of Roman spiritual practices, the public and the private, the dominant and the intimate. Rome's authorities passed laws against magic from the beginning. In 450 BC, There were already laws that contained provisions against harmful spells, particularly those targeting crops. The Lex Cornelia of the late Republic began to codify Rome's stance on magic, making harmful magic and poisoning illegal. In the intricate fabric of Roman society, the threads of magic and religion were woven closely. Yet distinct demarcations existed. Rome's religious rituals, deeply embedded in its civic life, were mechanisms that maintained the Pax Deorum, the harmonious relationship between the city and its gods. State-sanctioned rites, led by official priests and priestesses, enjoyed the unequivocal endorsement of the Roman authority. These were public affirmations of faith, with ceremonies, sacrifices, and festivals that celebrated the gods and reinforced societal unity. These rituals also echoed Rome's dominance over nature. Grand ceremonies called upon the gods to bless their military endeavors or ensure bountiful harvests, reinforcing the idea of humans bending the will of nature and the divine for their purposes. In contrast, magic was often perceived as a more personal, clandestine endeavor. While some of its practices mirrored religious rituals, the intent, secrecy, or forces invoked could push it into the realm of the illicit. Magic that aimed to manipulate, harm, or subvert, especially in private, was viewed with suspicion. It's this distinction that the laws frequently targeted. The magical practitioners who operated outside the umbrella of state-sanctioned religion tread a precarious path, celebrated by some for their unique skills, and by others viewed as potential disruptors of the societal order. As Rome's dominance grew, so did its desire to control all aspects of its citizens' lives, including their spiritual practices. This was reflected in its treatment of magic practitioners who were increasingly seen as outliers needing oversight. This era, then, was one of contrasts and coexistence. Magic practitioners, believing their role as intermediaries, navigated a society that both revered and questioned them, all under the watchful eyes of an authority keen on preserving order and tradition. As the Roman Empire entered a new epoch, the air was thick with change. The sun that once shone brightly on pagan practices now cast shadows of doubt and transformation. But how did this affect those who practiced magic and divination? How did society view them? And how did the authorities react? While the Christian Bible contains nuanced stances on witchcraft, divination, and magic, for this episode, we will focus primarily on how Roman society internalized and reacted to the Bible. We will do a more in-depth examination of the Bible's perspective in a later episode. The undercurrents of Christianity, once a marginalized faith, began to swell into a powerful force. The early Christians, initially dismissed and even persecuted, found themselves at the forefront of a spiritual revolution. Tacitus, ever the observant historian, noted their initial societal disdain in his annals. Christians were notorious for their depravity. Yet, as Christianity's influence grew, so did its reach into the heart of Rome. Emperors, senators, and the urban elite began aligning themselves with this new faith, marking a stark departure from the polytheistic traditions that had long defined Roman identity. Urban Rome, with its majestic basilicas and churches, became a beacon of Christian orthodoxy. St. Augustine, one of the seminal thinkers of early Christianity, opined on the transition from pagan to Christian beliefs. In his magnum opus, The City of God, he drew a distinction between the divine city of the Christians and the earthly city of the pagans. Augustine critiqued pagan practices, including their magical rituals, viewing them as distractions from the true path of God. His writings, underscored the church's stance on these practices, pushing them further into the realm of the proscribed. This shift had profound implications for magic practitioners. Pagan rituals and celebrations often took place outdoors, under the open sky, amidst nature. They celebrated the seasons, the earth, and the cosmos, reflecting a society that saw itself in a symbiotic relationship with the natural world. The term pagan itself, derived from the Latin paganus, originally referred to a villager or rustic, hinting at its deep connection to the countryside. As Christianity gained prominence, it was in these rural landscapes that pagan beliefs lingered the longest, away from the urban centers of Christian power. Magic, in this context, was an extension of that relationship, a way to tap into nature's mysteries and wonders. Christianity, however, introduced a different dynamic. Worship moved indoors, within the majestic walls of basilicas and churches. This architectural transition was symbolic. It signified not just a change in religious practice, but a broader shift in humanity's relationship with nature. From being participants in nature's grand dance, there was a gradual move towards viewing nature the same as Rome viewed the cultures around them, as something to be dominated and controlled. This new worldview impacted the perception of magic. Practices that once harmonized with nature's rhythms were now seen as challenges to the Christian order. But what of the magic practitioners during this seismic shift? In the cities, they found themselves at a crossroads. Their self-view, once rooted in traditions and a deep connection with nature and the divine, was now challenged. The New Testament's verses served as stark reminders of their changing status. Idolatry, sorcery, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. However, while urban centers underwent rapid Christianization, the rural landscapes told a different story. Here, the old gods still held sway. The worship of deities like Diana persisted, reflecting a resilience of ancient beliefs. The dichotomy between urban and rural beliefs created a tapestry of tension, adaptation, and coexistence. For the authorities, there was a clear agenda to promote Christian values, leading to policies and actions that often marginalized or persecuted pagan practices. For the magic practitioners of this era, their identity was in flux. In the cities, they faced skepticism and, at times, persecution. Yet, in the countryside, they were still revered figures, holding on to traditions that had spanned millennia. They stood at the intersection of a world in transition. Their practices, beliefs, and identities reflective of a Rome caught between its storied past and an uncertain future. As the chapters of Rome's illustrious history unfolded, its attitudes towards magic and those who practiced it evolved in tandem with its societal, political, and spiritual transformations. From the bustling streets of Rome to the serene countrysides, from the grand temples to the intimate corners of households, magic was an ever-present force, both celebrated and scrutinized. These practitioners, navigating the complex interplay of personal belief, societal perception, and authoritative decree, stood as symbols of Rome's multifaceted relationship with the mystical. Yet, while Rome's shadow stretched vast, beyond its borders, other rich tapestries of belief and tradition thrived. To the north and west, amidst the verdant landscapes of Europe, ancient tribes like the Celts and the Norse harbored their own profound connections to the arcane. In these lands, where dense forests whispered tales of old and the northern lights painted stories in the sky, another chapter of the witch's journey awaits. However, as we journey forward in time, we must prepare for a realm shrouded in misconception. The Middle Ages, often cast in popular imagination as a time of rampant witch hunts and persecutions, tells a much more nuanced tale. For much of this era, the perception and treatment of witches differed greatly from the stereotypes. So, as we close the book on Rome and its intricate dance with magic, we prepare not only to traverse the mystical terrains of the Celts and the Norse, but further to venture into the medieval epoch. Journey with us to lands where druids, seers, and shamans held sway, where ancient runes held power, and the spirits of nature were revered in rituals as old as time. Dive into the next installment of our series as we continue our exploration of witches, their legacy, and their indelible mark on history.